Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of our new product series, The Raven Call. I am Victoria, your host for today, and I'm joined by my colleague Mehmet, who is going to tell us a little bit more about his research on 0 days.
Yes.
Hello, Mehmet. Nice
Hello.
meeting you.
How are you?
All good. What about you?
I'm good as well. Thank you very much for having me in this podcast.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for visiting us here in the Netherlands.
I was watching those previous episodes. It was so lovely. So I just wanted to hijack the third episode. So
to be a celebrity, right? I think maybe before we start, you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and apparently you have quite a following as well. So maybe you can tap a little bit on that too.
So let's start from my background and then we can follow up with what we do. So I started in the cybersecurity back in 2002, 2001, something. It's been like more than 2 decades. Yeah. So I was always having like a young guy who had like a heavily interested in the computer. So which ended up me to looking for some sort of vulnerabilities, learning the hacking. And back in those days, we were just living in a completely different era. Like everything that we care about right now, the way we are looking at technology and everything was just completely different. And by the time I spent more time in the computers, and then I just realized my passion is just about finding those holes and the gaps in the softwares that has been implemented by hundreds of people, used by the thousands of organizations. And then as one guy, who have like try to understand what is that software is doing, what is this just for possibly forgotten locations, and there's some precautions and everything, and then coming up with the vulnerabilities was just satisfies me a lot. It was just making me so much happy about it. And then I just on top of this, and then you also reporting those vulnerabilities to the vendors and suppliers, and then eventually we're gonna have like a safer internet, which always been in the motivation in this company as well. I'm one of the co-founders of the product, and right now I'm currently responsible for the technology. We're just building the USDA and the other like blind spots, Scala, Cybertron. Those are the products that we have just implemented and developed just because we would like to still keep the fight between people like us and the cyber criminals, because we would like to tackle all of those vulnerabilities and cyber threats so that we're going to have like a better internet and safer internet for every single human in this planet. So that was always been the motivation for me. And it's just also like the huge spirit behind the scenes in the product, and every single team member that we have in the company, and currently we have around like 70 engineers all over the 4 different offices and countries. So everybody is just like have like a one goal, which is to keep the fight going on and start to one step ahead of those things. So I just coming from the vulnerability researching and the hacking scene, and then by the funding the product, we would like to, like as I just described before, we just like try to implement some solutions at the same time. It was just like a similar things, building the products and the breaking the products. It's just kind of like a hammer, like you can just demolish like a wall, or you can just like build another one. It's just kind of same thing. Or also, it's just so fun to building the products that's going to break the other one. It's just like always about
you're sort of like trying to find, if there is something to be broken in the first place and something to be improved.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was very interested because yesterday you had a presentation about your research on 0 day vulnerabilities.
Yes.
So can you also tell us a little bit more about 0 days in general? Like why in the first place they interest you so much, and why they're also so essential to be understood by the wider cyber community?
Like this 0 day, it's just like all the vulnerabilities are not the same. First of all, like there's a difference discussions and the topics regarding that this type of vulnerabilities. But whenever the topic comes to the 0 day, it is just kind of vulnerability that hasn't been found yet by any of us. At least this is what we assume. But like recently, this is another interesting topic as well. But recently, we just like realize all of those vulnerabilities that we have found as a 0 day already being funded by the cyber criminals, and they have been starting using them. So those hackers just finding those vulnerabilities, and they don't report it to anyone, and they just like keeping it safe and just use them whenever they want, right? They're just like aging some vulnerabilities until the moment they really want to use it. So like by the definition of the 0 day, for us, it's just like a vulnerability that is just found by now, and the vendor doesn't even know about it. So it just makes it really, really important and very, very critical for every single organization that has been affected by that vulnerability, because you just like, a very vulnerable point. It was just like a vulnerability. You don't know how it's going to work. You don't know the technical details. You don't have any kind of signatures about that specific vulnerabilities. So it's just like a golden key that going to unlock every single door you want of those targeted companies. So the way I see those zero-day vulnerabilities, we have to put a lot of effort for the finding those vulnerabilities, which is also requires the cooperation with the vendors and the suppliers in the market as well. But like shocking news for everybody, I think all of those vulnerabilities funded by researchers like me, my people in the company, we just realized all of those vulnerabilities has been used by the cyber criminal and adversaries before.
How can you actually see this? You know, like when you see the vulnerability for the first time and you're like, oh, that's 0 day that hasn't been reported. But then how do you realize like, oh, this has been used by a cyber criminal before? Can you just see this in the way how they're using their tactics, their procedures, how they're attacking a specific target? How do you even like find out about this?
It is the timeline problem. Like, let's say we just find one vulnerability right now, and then we're just going to report it to the vendor and we just get it fixed all the world itself. Okay. But a couple of months later, one of the companies has been breached, and by looking at the way the hackers are breaking into the company happened a year ago by using the same vulnerability. So that means the timeline of the 0 days can be way behind the moment you just realize it, because the hackers are just finding in something in the past and then just using him. So like it's most of the cases, the time we just realize like some companies has been breached by using those 0 days that actually has been found by the criminals just way before we just like found them in the real life.
I would say like that's why it's important to patch them soon, right? Because like if you don't patch them, and it's actually funny to see that there is a vulnerability that has been explored in like, I don't know, maybe it happened in 2019 and it's still there and cyber criminals can still exploit it. So
which is another huge topic, Vicky. Like, you know, like there's a multiple different problem in this area. Like, so the first thing that the most of the organizations don't know how many suppliers they have, what kind of technologies they are depending on every single day operation in the business of the organization.
So they're not even aware of the whole supply chain.
Most of the cases, because it's so hard to like looking for the supply chain. It's just, you can just discover the first layer of suppliers, but what about the suppliers? So you are being the supplier of your supplier.
It's like a
so you have to dissolve the whole trust chain in the system, which is kind of so hard that we just like another problem that we're currently working on over the past year. But like everything you start with to start to understand what you have in the place. You have to know your assets and everything, and then you have to develop like an efficient patch management system because you need to know, right? And then the time between the patch has been released by the vendor and the time you just apply the patch has to be close as much as you can. And the most of the organizations, due to the lack of resources or the money, a lot of different things is just being involved in that equation. There's the time gap between that time frame. It's just getting like a 1 year up until the 2 year, because there is some forgotten devices or softwares in your system that you don't know even about it. And there's just like a vulnerability has been reported like 3 years ago. The patch has been realized like 1.5 years ago, and your devices still keep on running. You didn't even know it wasn't exist in your arsenal. So there's a lot of it's just like a mixed picture, you know?
Yeah, because I'm trying to understand if you think it's, you know, organizations sort of like not being aware of everything that is contributing to their possibility of being exploited, or if it's also themselves not being fully transparent about how they can address and patch and reassess vulnerabilities.
Yeah, so like I think like both of them has just leading us to the two different topics. Just like from the buyer perspective, the companies are just depending on those softwares. They have to really manage their softwares and the arsenals and tools and everything, and that they need to do like efficient patch management system, etc., etc. But on the other side, for the suppliers, they are not transparent about the vulnerabilities that have been reported by the vulnerability researchers or hackers or the other ones. Right now, all over the world using the CVA numbering system. Like those are the numbers has been issued for the specific vulnerabilities. But what is the number of product in the list and the number of the product that we have in this planet? So the gap is so huge. Different and huge. And the like a bigger companies, they have to like they've been spending a lot of money and effort and time to be able to transparent as much as they can, which also had a lot of problems at the same times, because it, like issuing the CVA number and letting your customers know that specific vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean you're telling the truth as well. What about like the vulnerability is actually very critical, but you're just claiming it like a medium? It's just like a telling and like creating a picture like there's a vulnerability, you have to patch it as soon as possible, but it's a medium severity. It doesn't make any sense. We're just seeing a lot of problems like this. And so I'm telling like all the companies, just patch it no matter what is the severity of the vulnerability, because you're never going to be able to know what that specific vulnerability can be lead to the whole attack chain system. So like from the supplier perspective, a lot of companies are just like so conservative about being researched by the people like us. And most of the time it requires a lot of effort for the vulnerability researchers having access to the product and try to do vulnerability research and disclose those vulnerabilities to the vendor and get the vulnerabilities being fixed. It just like takes a lot of effort and time. I personally have to talk with the sales department of those vendors and pretending like I'm a buyer to be able to get a demo account so that we can just do the research, because that specific research has to be done because one of our major clients depends on that product. We just like try to understand what is the actual risk. So there's a lot of things that we have to be developing this area. And over the past 2 decades, we just tried different things. And then I think right now, the only options left is just the legislation. It has to be come through the legislation perspective. And we have to encourage those suppliers and the technology providers in the market to be able to give more chance and opportunity to the good faith cybersecurity researchers who like to find vulnerabilities, report it, and then try to have
help them. But do you think they're also like, as a vendor or a solution provider, are you skeptical about this? Are you really skeptical about the fact that there are people who really find this as an interesting field of study and they want to help and they want to report those vulnerabilities? Because I'm just trying to understand why, if you have someone that is really trying to tell you, hey, there is a gap in your product, there is something that needs to be patched, why they would either sort of refuse to do anything about it, or they are just sort of like not willing to,
It doesn't make any sense, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes you like a very, very good person. That's the main reason.
It's like, not everyone is altruistic.
Yes, like the organization perspective, have a look at the problem from the different angle. Let's try to understand. There's some couple of guys who would just like doing the research on the things that you have all the rights and permissions. And then like even this makes some like a disturbing feelings for those providers, because there's some guy looking for the gaps, like looking for your mistakes, looking for the things that you couldn't be able to do even though you're spending millions of dollars, right? But the problem is they don't, I think they accept is that like no matter what you do, no matter how much money you're putting in it, there will be always vulnerability. There has always been a vulnerability, and there will be. And unfortunately, the number of vulnerabilities dramatically increasing over the past 10 years, because that's how it's just natural things happening. Like not only the whole market, but also the softwares have the suppliers as well, like the libraries, the components, the other softwares. That specific software is also used to be able to work together. So that same chain, the trust chain problem also have the technologies inside. So even if you just do everything you can, spend like millions of dollars, that will be a vulnerability. Like Log4j case, which is a very specific case. That was just a Java library that has been used by the billions of devices. So as a company who is just like building a product by using that technology, no matter no matter how much money I do invest, that will be a vulnerability. So I think like the whole scene was just like 10 years ago, it was just completely not to do things like doing the vulnerability research, those products without having a permission. But I just like have like a positive feeling as well over the past 10 years, the most of the companies just seeing how important it is to creating a safe harbor for the researchers like us to be able to find the vulnerabilities before the actual hackers and adversaries.
Because at the end, you're contributing, you're making something better, because like if you explore this and you report it instead of trying to exploit it, you know, those are two different scenarios.
Exactly.
Like it's definitely helpful for the company. And as you pointed out yesterday, sometimes finding one vulnerability just leads to a cascade of finding others. And then you were showing this like nice picture of like how this can contribute to like many different areas of what can be exploited within the company, which at the very end, it's going to be so detrimental for any organization.
Yeah. So like if it's just like a rabbit hole, it's just like every single vulnerability research. Like over the past 5 years, I never wanted to do it in the first place. I found myself in a situation like in this company, we have 4 or 5 different individual teams, and we have like a smartest people in this field. So I'm just so blessed and have like a huge opportunity to work with those people together because they do the best what they do. I'm just like being witness what they do. And then eventually at some point we found ourselves in a situation like kicking off the vulnerability research project out of the blue. So
why not?
Why not?
You never know if it's going to be on the pipeline.
Yes, exactly. You never know. And this is like the beautiful thing about that presentation I done yesterday. It just comes to like a very, very same perspective. And we just like found one vulnerability. It was just like a one-off forgotten token in the code base. And like, as I said at the beginning, we do not fight against the cybercrime. So we cannot pretend like we haven't seen that token. Like the moment you see, you are responsible. And I feel responsible about every single vulnerabilities I've seen. And it has to get fixed. Otherwise, I can't sleep. Like,
but this is, this is the goodness in you that you're able to. Well, I hope so. Maybe there's another reason. I don't know. No, but it's just the idea that, like, as you said, like you're witnessing something and you feel that you're responsible. So you are also able to take the matter into your own hands, which also like brings me to, like yesterday you asked yourself the same question, like, how can you actually evaluate the providers? Like what aspects of the products are really looked at to say that like the product is, safe from all of the vulnerabilities, which I don't think can happen because as you said, even if you spend thousands of millions of money, there still might be something. But is there something that could also help people, for example, someone that is trying to integrate new product or use new product in the company, some aspects that they can look at within the product to understand if it's going to be prone to various vulnerabilities, or is there nothing of that sort?
That's a beautiful question, Vicky, because that's the question I've always been asking myself over the 15 years, because we are a technology provider, but also we are buyer as well. We just use those softwares and components and different tools from the different companies. And okay, we are lucky because we are in the cybersecurity field and we have full of researchers, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be able to do the vulnerability research on every single product that we're planning to do. It doesn't make any sense. So I was just thinking about like 10 years ago, how we can just truly understand. And that question, not only the only person I was asking that question, the whole industry was questioning that trust problem in the chain. And there's a lot of things has been tried before, like the insurance companies sending the questionnaires to be able to at least give me some numbers that are going to build up some equation and try to score the companies. But it didn't work because it's a human dependent. First of all, you just send in questionnaires and asking, well, how many firewalls you have? Like how many antivirus? What was the last time you just faced with a cyber attack? Like 90% of those companies just telling none, which is not true.
And we also
I'm
don't
not
know
saying
exactly
those people lying, but
if
it's just like a 6 month has been just like a 6 month for a new guy in the company who's just filling the form. He didn't even know what happened 3 years ago.
But sometimes they're not even aware. Sometimes they're not even aware they're being targeted as well.
So the questionnaire is not works. It's not working. We know it. It can be worked and used for the different aspect of the supply chain problem, but for the mass scale automated fully trusted solution or something that just like I'm just imagining one box, you're just magically gonna do it. The question has been tested, and I believe it's just like inefficient. But it was a step that we have to go through in the development of that field as well. And then we've been just like that like 5 years ago or something. So other thing that a lot of companies is doing, just try to track those CVA numbers, because they try to have like a picture or posture of the products, and then try to understand what is like the history behind it. But the problem is, number of companies is issuing the CVA, and number of company that we have in this universe, it just doesn't matter.
Of course, it's just it's disproportional.
So all of those, just I think like those are the reactive approaches. You can just ask for the pen test report. We do vulnerability research on demand by our friends or other companies who just developing the product. We have like a good track record in this field. So they're asking for like, can you hack our product? Because we would like to make sure everything is clear. And then we want like to also share that report with our buyers, because they're starting asking for like the latest pen test report, or like I think a vulnerability research reports more like the precise and correct. So, all right. But like, most of those providers also coming with a really clean reports at the end, and so you're not going to be able to. So there's a lot of trial and error thing happening in this field, but I think like we should have more focus on the chain problem. It's actually the root cause of the problem. This is what I see the whole picture. We have to fully understand how we're going to be able to build the chain that the company is just like trusted every single basis. And then we have to be keeping track and fully understand that graph theory that those companies are provided with each other. So there's a huge global network in that field. And we have to find a way to do it. And then I think rather than like sending some questionnaires, asking some questions, poking the clients and the vendors, we should just change our mindset and the focus to somewhere else. That place that we have to keep looking at is the place where the hackers and adversaries and threat actors are. We have to, I think, like find out what those guys are doing. By that means the whole threat intelligence field can be used and benefit for the understand the risk, and the moment we're going to be able to understand what kind of providers we have, the providers of those providers, and then combining these information and the data gathering process of that, what the hackers are doing. Actually, I think we fully find a way to find like a more proactive approach to be able to understand that one of those suppliers are going to be exposed a huge risk for you.
And this is something that as a company we have been trying to do since the very beginning, right? Like you're not focused on the consequences of something that has already happened and you cannot change it. You are focused on the first steps within the kill chain that are able to determine if the company will sort of survive or if they're headed towards a very bad shit, to put it that way. So it's always about being aware, as you said, like all of the little steps and points, everything that is happening in the supply chain as well, because at the very end of the day, everything is so interconnected. You cannot just divide like little bits and pieces and tell me like, oh, as a company, I feel very secure because I know everything is fine. But what if one of your providers or one of the other vendors is not safe? Then at the very end, you're going to be compromised as well.
Exactly. And the whole scene is just moving towards that supply problems, because it is more easier for the hackers. If you just have a look at the SolarWind case or MoveIt case that's been happening over the past. That was a specific vulnerability in a software called as a MoveIt. And that vulnerability has been audited this very same vulnerability has been found about 3 years ago, a friend of mine. And he tried to report it to the vendor, and it is just like I couldn't be able to get it fixed. And I don't want to spend too much time with the clients and working. So, but 3 years later, the adversaries just like use the same vulnerabilities. And right now, the whole internet is just talking about it in the end. So if it's just like a simple software and everything, the whole scene is moving here because it's more easier for the hacker just finding the ones where they vulnerabilities or multiple ones, just combine them together and use it like a whole chain. And then it's just like you're going to be able to break in every single companies who use that product. It's just more easier, effortless way, right? it was just like that, like 15 years ago. All of those malwares were just for the desktop. And the moment the whole mobile era just kicked in, we just started seeing all of those malware developers and hackers groups are just moving their focus to the mobile
because
network.
they're also focused on this. Like technology is happening in the good side and then also in the bad side, because obviously if you see that there is something and it's not thoroughly researched yet, or you see that there is some door for you to open and get in there, if you have malicious intentions, like you're willing to get inside, so
it's easier. Like I was just like couple of months ago, it was just like a 5 p.m. in the morning, 4 days in a row, vulnerability research, try to understand what's happening, a lot of trials and errors and mental breakdown and everything. And at 5 p.m. by the morning, the moment I just like realized the whole chain, and then I just like, Jesus, there's a tons of companies right now just can be breached just by using that path I just seen in the morning.
When it dawns on you, it's pretty strong. It is. Yeah. So then, like, to somehow try to conclude maybe on a positive note, what would be your recommendation for the companies to really make sure that they don't need to be waking up in the middle of night thinking, oh Jesus, I can be breached?
that was like a picture, like all of the C-level of management people, how they are asleep in the bed. That was just like a CEO laying down like this, CFO something. And for the CISOs, there was no one in the bed in the picture. No one sleeps.
It's like that is just such a good image of what is happening in the field.
Somewhere here.
It's like
that's it. Like I think the whole supply chain problem, you have to get started somewhere. You have to like find a way to understand what's your asset, what's your attack surface, and what are the hackers are doing. And then in case of something happening that is related with you, you have to get notified and knows about it. And I think those are the most important topic that like every single organization has to spend some time and do some investments. And then I think they slowly and surely moves toward to the supply chain problem, because it is not something I believe that you can do in the first day. You have to get like a prepared and get ready for it. Try to understand your own inventory and everything, and you have to form up a process for the defensive perspective. Cybersecurity means process. Like you have to define process and everything and the flow, because like the vulnerabilities, it is just happening because people are tend to do mistakes and they forgot to do some sort of checks and controls, or they're just like being lost in the big picture. Whatever they do in just like it make total sense, but you're just breaking something like a huge trust chain in the code base. So I think like building a solid process, it was just like the key on success. This is what I truly believe. And
also, moral of the story, don't be sloppy, you know? Make sure that you're working hard or smart, to put it that way. No, thank you so much, Mehmet.
Cheers,
thank you for all of the insights. I think we could just go on about this topic forever, because obviously we see your passion, we see your determination. Also, thanking you on behalf of the community that you're trying to make, things better in here. And I really hope that we're moving towards a more positive world where people are aware of the things that could be exploited and they really want to contribute to improvements that will keep the organization secure.
We will be there, Ricky. I truly believe that all of those new people who are coming to the cybersecurity, we're gonna be able to reach there. There's no other way. That's the way.
That's the way. The only way how we can do all of those things. Seriously, thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully everyone learned something new. And if anyone has any extra questions, we can just ask
you know where to find me.
Mehmet is a celebrity, so you know how to look him up. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.